talking to Hayley Maia, who is a wild oracle. And I love that title. And I was wondering if you could tell me what it encapsulates.
Yeah, so the wildness of it is really about what's natural, and what's natural is kind of sometimes out of control, but not necessarily out of control, but just what's kind of organic and authentic and inclusive of whatever arises, I suppose. So that's the wild part. And then the oracle part is kind of like being in tune with what is unseen. So like energies, other worlds, magic, feeling, sensation. Wow. Yeah, all stuff that for me is about tuning inwards and being aware of, I guess, like the universe that is happening inside, and its myriad of different forms and expressions. Last year I went through a pretty dark night of the soul, you could say, and I really lost touch with, or I didn't feel like I had access to what was true about me. Like I just, really didn't have the strength of that connection as I had been used to previously. And so as part of my putting myself back together and kind of being on an ascent again, that's been about really clarifying who I am, what's important to me, again. Like I'd done it before, but it's kind of like it needed to be fresh with everything that I had learned up until that point, with all the wisdom that came from being in that kind of really dark and painful space that I was in. So I've been kind of like building a house for myself to live in again, and part of that has been about identifying who I am. And I don't know where this kind of title came from, but when it came, it just really stuck. Like, that feels like me.
So beautiful. And that process of rediscovering what's important to you at a new phase of life, were there any particular things of like, this is really important to me, that like are practices or things that you come back to?
Tuning inwards, writing, just being in my body, connecting to feeling, connecting to the earth, connecting with others. Beautiful. And I love that it's kind of, it started with just this idea, and it only grew because I wanted to, or because I was willing to put more attention on it. And as I put more attention on it, I've been noticing just like synchronicities and things like outside of myself that reflect that back to me. It's like, it's like worlds need to begin like inside, and then they can start like expanding and being reflected outside.
So beautiful. And I'd love, on this same like train of thought, to hear about your process of self-marriage, of that, like that being a really important thing for you to do before you married another.
Yeah. For me, self-marriage, it wasn't like a precursor to getting married. It was just something that stood alone for me. I wasn't really familiar with ritual at that time, but it was more like an inner knowing. And I've always written, so it's like all of this took place in my journal. But yeah, it was just this, I guess, recognition that I'm what I have to work with, and everything around me is only as good as how I feel about me, but also how I feel about my life and the things that I'm doing with my time and energy. Yeah, and I guess it also came from the knowing that I couldn't live anymore with making other people a priority over me. Because I was really good at that, and it didn't work. I have this theory that things kind of do need to get to a crisis point for a real transformation or a real shift to happen. And so for me, it only came after experiencing the just pain of like being removed from myself and not caring about myself and not taking action on that caring. Yeah.
Wow, it's a really interesting idea that that true transformation only happens at kind of a crisis point.
I kind of feel like there are some aspects of my life where I'm really quite connected and I can kind of perceive the imbalances fairly quickly so that I can right them. But then there are other things which are like blind spots or like things that come from like the side, which to me is like the I don't know, like the internal outsiders that are coming in to be integrated, like the places that are most. So now that we've like created a safe and loving container for this much of ourselves, now this, you know, really dark and lost aspect can kind of come in. And sometimes that does just need to kind of hit us for a six, I think. Or that has been my experience.
Absolutely. Is there any blind spots that have been, or those external aspects that have been coming through lately for you to notice and work with? Any patterns of behaviour or?
Yes. In my mind, self-love, or the idea of self-love, can be something that's quite tame, I suppose. Like it's just about taking an extra bath at night, or, you know, making sure that you have flowers when you get home, or like taking 10 minutes out to meditate in the morning. Whereas for me, and what I'm finding more and more is that self-love is kind of, this is what's coming up for me in my life at the moment, it's kind of ruthless and fierce in that it is willing for anything that's not serving me, even if it's something that I really want to keep close and to kind of hold on to and that I really care about. Like if that doesn't serve my growth, self-love will kind of destroy it, either like in one bang or over time.
Wow, so a ruthless quality.
Yeah, yeah. Something that I'm really, really, really grateful for is how many of those experiences have caused a really deep death and rebirth, I suppose. And that has been through me kind of being willing to, you could call it self-love, or you could call it just following your heart, or being in alignment, or any number of things, but kind of taking a chance or taking a risk or being willing to go in the direction of that, even if every other thing is saying, no, don't go there, you shouldn't go there, we don't go there. Kind of heading into the taboo places. And I find that those places are the places that interest me, like the places that are really other, really separated, really segregated, and therefore kind of come through really destructively. in both the self and in society or in culture.
Would you feel comfortable sharing any examples or stories of like where that voice of self-love or that part of you has led you that's been taboo or terrifying to the rest of you?
Yeah. For example, my voice is shaking, and it has been shaking this whole time. And it's because, and I felt this coming before I came here, like I knew that I was going to be, like my body was preparing for me sharing something that is vulnerable, that would be safer kept to myself, but I also felt really called to come here because those are the places that I want to expose. Like, so that's one example of like when you're being interviewed or when you're on something, you've got to be like really poised and calm, not nervous. So one of my stories is like I grew up kind of being really shamed for being shy and introverted. And so all the parts of me that are like shaky and small and, you know, just scared, I suppose, and them being expressed ever is like a bad and terrible thing, and that shouldn't be seen by anyone. There's this author called Sarah Beek, and she has this talk up online on Vimeo. Can't remember what it's called exactly, something about trembling boldness, and she talks about like the shake in her voice and how like in her touring career she was kind of approached by coaches or well-meaning people to give her advice about how she could speak more confidently. And it was so powerful watching her speak about how she decided not to go there. She decided to just bring her like small voice, and that there was a power in doing that. Like there's something that is that happens in expressing that and being willing to speak anyway, that gives permission for other people to speak even if their voices are trembling.
Standing there shaking but still offering yourself and still saying the thing that you want to say. I think that's like true courage in a way. What else have you been enjoying watching or reading recently?
So I'm thinking a lot about values lately and about the importance of clarifying and defining what we want to stand for, so that we don't kind of get sucked into everyone else's or society's kind of by default, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the whole wild oracle thing, so that puts me in touch with what my values are, so that I don't get sucked away into what other people are doing or thinking or I mean, it's one thing to be inspired by others, but it's another thing to kind of be in comparison mode and like comparing and thinking that what you're doing isn't enough, or what you have to share can't possibly compete with that, because we all have something incredible to share.
Yeah, I really resonate with that idea of values and tuning into what yours are, and that like I feel that a lot of our energy or vitality can be lost when we're trying to live other people's values, not realizing that they're not ours at all. And when you find what yours are, it's like, oh, this is energizing me, this is giving me life.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same as other people.
Yeah. And for me, it's such a relief. It's like when I touch on something that I've been carrying that's not mine, and I'm like, why the fuck have I been carrying this thing around? It's so heavy and it feels awful, and I can just put it down. And then it's like all the energy that was taken up in me carrying that thing can be put towards what I actually am interested in and inspired by, even if that thing is weird and taboo and all these other things. Wow. I'm really, really, really in the right place being in this space with you guys and taking a risk on doing something like an interview, because for a really long time it's like there's a part of me that really desperately wanted to be seen and to share, I guess, authentically, to just share and show up and be honest and open. And at the same time, I was terrified of doing that, and so I hid behind all the possible barriers to being seen, because it felt just excruciating. And I think that has a lot to do with like all the baggage for me around shyness and that kind of thing, and being introverted. So this is like kind of a marker for me in my journey of being willing to step in to that space. Yeah.
What is it that makes you come alive?
Let me tune in. Taking risks that I've chosen and that are in alignment with what I really believe in and am inspired by, whatever that may be, even if it's the thing that seems least likely to be in my path, or to be something that makes sense. It's like taking a risk for the thing that makes no sense, even though I feel called.
Thank you for sharing that, Hayley, and thank you for coming. It's so beautiful to talk to you.
Yay!
And especially with that trembling boldness. It's beautiful. It makes it, for me, even more special. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Strength, courage, and wisdom.